This is sort of a channel update on the process, I guess. So I'm going to do my reading of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance tonight, but Chapter 5 has too much going on for me to do it in one go. There's a particular topic of Chris's relationship with his father and Chris's relationship with mental health issues, and I want to talk about that in more depth. So I'm going to divide that into two parts, and that's probably going to happen often because some of these chapters are really dense and they address a lot of complicated concepts, and they just have to be discussed at length. I don't want them to be too long, and I don't want to put all my weak video energy into that because I've got some other things I also want to talk about. I mean, stuff comes up all the time. You know how it is. This world is full of amazing information. Secondly, the whole point of this exercise that I'm undertaking is to somehow translate the wisdom of these books, and in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance and Lila, and material related to them. There's a lot of good material from fans and scholars, as a new way of conceiving our experience and opening up to another dimension, improving mental health. Ultimately, let's just say a way of transforming ourselves into being equipped to handle what is going to come next, or hopefully a sane form of postmodernism. So I have to use myself as a guinea pig in this venture. So let me just talk about myself for a second. I'm looking for a way to use Pierce's work to teach me how to transform my consciousness into something that makes life better. So I think it is a fortuitous discovery to find John Vervake's awakening from the meaning crisis, because this is what he's teaching. He has a theory and he has a method of implementing this theory. And, this is someone who's put a tremendous amount of intellectual effort and spiritual practice, let's just say, into this effort. And I think that it's something I really should integrate a little bit more seriously. I studied Jordan Peterson for a long time for the same reason, and he's teaching the same thing. He taught me so much, but I kind of got stuck with Jordan Peterson on the issue of transformation of consciousness. His prescription: tell the truth, take on as much responsibility as you can handle, aim for the higher good, become the forthright individual, be the hero. Vervake is more of this, and I don't know his work as well as Peterson's, so I'm probably going to get this not quite right, but it's something like, get a handle on how you think and use mindfulness practices to transform your consciousness into being more relevant than having. As you do this, you cultivate wisdom. You become wise. So Peterson is becoming the forthright individual. Vervake is becoming wise. Of course, there's going to be crossover, but basically it's something like that. So Peterson is, for all intents and purposes here, a Christian, and that's wonderful. Vervake, I believe, has said he's a Buddhist. I believe their prescriptions for the health of the consciousness of the individual and the community are equally valid, but I think they appeal to different temperaments. So how do they differ, and how does this difference appeal to different temperaments? Peterson, like I said, was ridiculously valuable to me to understanding a particular kind of metaphysics, let's just say mythological one, and I was very interested in Jung at the time, so that's how I found Peterson. But what I got tripped up on is his method for transformation. It didn't really include meditation, and there is a particular subject-object metaphysics to his directive to take on responsibility. It's more engaged in the outside world is more engaged than it would be in another case, in a more contemplative, or let's just say meditative case. And I think what you are trying to do in all of this is transform yourself into the sort of person that doesn't avoid responsibility. And you can do this also with mindfulness practices, because these practices teach you to tolerate negative emotion, for one. So does meaning, through responsibility. So either way, you become more responsible because you can handle responsibility better. But which way works for you is going to depend on the kind of person you are, I think. To reference Pirsig, Peterson's method is more classical. Vervake's is more romantic, although that's very, very simplistic. You could also say Peterson is more conscientious, Vervaeke more open, but that doesn't work either, because I believe they're both equally high in both traits, and both possess a very high level of these traits. They both seem agreeable. They're both life-changing professors, so they probably would have to be. Potentially, Vervaeke comes off as less neurotic than Peterson, but Peterson has been very forthcoming about that. Extroversion, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the difference in these guys is in the big five, or the difference in their methods of transformation of consciousness. But I would say that the temperamental understanding at the bottom of it is something like Eastern and Western, essentially. There is crossover, of course, because Peterson understands Tao and integrates that into his theory, and Vervaeke is an expert in Western philosophy and uses it liberally. Another distinction for Peterson's method, change involves, like I said, the external world. Vervaeke's is the internal world. More so, obviously, the transformative change is internal, but the external world is implemented more with Peterson rather than Vervaeke, I think you could argue. I think also another difference might be that the means to transformation is ritual versus mindfulness. Peterson being ritual, Vervaeke being mindfulness. Now, ritual can be mindful, and mindfulness is cultivated often through ritual. But again, I think it's about the emphasis on what it is. So Vervaeke emphasizes the mindfulness more, and Peterson emphasizes the ritual more. So let's just say for me, the method is mindfulness, which is why I'm drawn to Vervaeke's actual method for transformation, and why I want to integrate it with what I'm trying to do with Pirsig. And I think that these fine research scholar, scientists, professors, really, this is what we should be using their incredible research for, is for those of us who can't get to that level, but can understand it, but can't actually do that kind of work, to take their work and use it on a day-to-day basis in society. So the point of what I'm trying to do with this channel is figure out, maybe in a roundabout and tangential way, what the means to transformation through the work of Pirsig is, just because I have a gut instinct that the answer is in there. And I think it's more than a gut instinct. I do think the answer is in the metaphysics of quality. But I also see that other theorists are valuable for this as well. Along the mindfulness versus ritual lines, Wilbur is valuable to me. Alan Watts is valuable to me. And Vervaeke is so parallel with Pirsig for me at this time, for where I am, and to other aspects of this project, that I think I'm going to be devoting a lot of bandwidth to him in the near future. That is, of course, not to say you can't learn a lot from the other camp, from the more ritual camp. C.S. Lewis is definitely on, if you pick one or the other, on the ritual side, but he is so important. Richard Rohr is a Christian who is more on the mindfulness side, as is Cynthia Bourgeault. And there is the question of everyday versus the real world. This is from Vervaeke. Maybe the one camp, ritual, can help us infuse the everyday world with meaning, and the other camp, mindfulness, can help us transcend the everyday. So the two can help each other. And the last update I want to say is Vervake's number 16 this week absolutely blew me away on multiple levels. It's the one about agape. And I want to address this whole thing, especially the part about agape, through the lens I use the most these days. Agape affects us all in more ways than you realize. I'll try to have that video out by Thursday. And the last thing I want to say is I want to comment on that last video I made about Zizek and the Buddhist monks, etc. I wasn't justifying the monks' behavior. I was trying to point out that no matter what you think of any religion, there is always the everyday and the real world aspect to them. This is inescapable. C.S. Lewis navigates the duality of this better than most theologians. He says, at least that I've read, which isn't all of them by far. But C.S. Lewis sort of says this. He says, yes, I know it's hard. I know it's tearing you apart, and I know it's paradoxical. Do it anyway. So I hope this made sense, and I'll see you next time.